This week in FYE 140, we are going to be discussing feedback and revision strategies. So now that we've passed the halfway point of the course, you're going to want to think about a lot of the things that you've accomplished so far, all of the different topics that we've explored, audience, purpose, tone. In addition, thinking about how we looked at the ethical use of information, what critical thinking does when we add it to our papers, clarity. All of these are important parts of what we intend on looking for when we grade assignments. So as instructors, we not only want to see what you've learned in the course, but how you've implemented it into your own writing. So this week, in week 5, you'll see that you're going to learn how to approach revision as a thoughtful, strategic process and not just editing for grammar. I always tell my students that the first version of a paper is never the version you're going to submit because you're going to make changes, you're going to look at it in a different way, even if it's only an hour after you finished it. It's always good to go back, look, see what you can change once you're in a different mindset, and be open to the idea of feedback. Getting feedback from your instructors is important because it helps you grow as a learner, but you'll also see at various points throughout your time at the university, you may do an assignment where you get feedback from your peers. And that's one such thing that we're going to discuss in this week's assignment and discussion board. So the week 5 discussion says building and refining your personal inventory. So as always, the initial post is due by Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. and you have to do 2 peer replies by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Now, I highly recommend you do your peer replies as early as possible because those peer replies are what your classmates are going to utilize for their assignments. So it says you need to create a 1 to 2 paragraph personal inventory that explores your academic and professional identity. So we've talked about our identities so far this term. We've looked at them in our personal sense, how we handle our day-to-day life with friends and family. We looked at them in a professional sense when we're out in the workforce, and then also an academic sense within the classroom. So think of this personal inventory as a way to evaluate yourself at where you are currently and where you would like to be, but also what you've been able to accomplish so far, not just in this course, but in life. So it's very similar to a resume in the sense that you are looking at what you've done and showing others. So if you open up the discussion board, you're going to see that it's broken down into 5 bullet points. And you're going to create a 1 to 2 paragraph personal inventory that explores your academic and professional identity. Address at least 2 of the following areas. So you don't need to address all of these, you just need to address at least 2. And you're going to be doing this in a 1 to 2 paragraph personal inventory. Remember that paragraphs need to be at least 5 sentences, and they're generally between 5 to 7 sentences. It would be great if you could write 5 sentences for 2 of these options. So if you could do skills and strengths, what are you naturally good at? What have others praised you for? If you could write at least 5 sentences thinking thoughtfully about that, that would be perfect. And then if you picked, for example, academic and career goals, where do you see yourself heading and why? And then you could write another 5 sentences for that. Whichever ones you choose to focus on, make sure you indicate that to the reader. So when your classmates are seeing this, they know what exactly you chose from the list. More importantly, it's necessary to know so that your instructor can help give some feedback as well about what might need to be changed in the final version when you submit it at the end of the week for your assignment. So think of the discussion board as a rough draft of what you're going to utilize for your assignment. So that's why it's important that you stick to the Wednesday posting schedule for your initial post to ensure that you get the feedback required. Now, when you're working on this, don't just list things off in bullets. Don't just list off what you're naturally good at. Think about what it is that you do every single day in a way that is enjoyable for you, but could also be beneficial for others. So, what are those skills and strengths? What can you bring to the table in not just the workforce, but also in school, in your personal life? And when you're thinking about perhaps what others have praised you for, it could be in different areas. It doesn't have to be something you were praised for at work, but perhaps a family or friend did. So remember, you don't need to do all five of these. You just need to pick two and address them fully. Don't just write 1 to 2 sentences for each because that's not going to get the point across. You want something that your classmates can look at, think about, and respond to. So out of the five, again, my recommendation is to write a paragraph for each. So 5 sentences for each one. And when you post it as your initial post, you can then go in and look at other personal inventories that people have posted in their sections. So when you're giving your feedback, it's very important that you take a look at what we're asking you to use in your responses. So it says read at least 2 inventories and practice providing feedback to your peer. In your response, include. So you're including all 3 of these points for each of the 2 or more, at least 2, but you could do more, people you reply to. One strength you see in their personal inventory. So what are they doing well? One suggestion for improvement or clarification, and one resource or idea they might explore based on their goals. So if someone is discussing about perhaps pursuing a master's degree after they finish their undergrad, you could recommend seeking out programs early on so they can know what they need to take at the undergrad level to prepare them fully for the future, maybe different opportunities for scholarships, things that you would like to see provided that you think would be helpful. But you want to build it around what they're saying. So the content that you're recommending needs to align with the content that they've provided. Now, in the assignment, it says, in this assignment, you will revise your previously submitted personal inventory using peer feedback and self-reflection and reflect on the changes you made. So let's take a look at the instructions. So a polished personal inventory. So you're taking what you posted on your discussion board, you're incorporating the feedback that you received from your classmates, but then you're also writing a reflection. And the reflection is really important because that needs to show the instructor what you did to change between the two and why. So what changes did you make based on feedback? What did you learn about yourself? And how can this tool help you plan for your next steps academically or professionally? So when we're talking about this tool, we mean the personal inventory and the idea of self-reflection. Thinking critically about ourselves, not necessarily about others when we're writing this reflection, because you're reflecting on yourself. In the discussion board, you responded critically. And remember, when you give feedback, you don't want to do it in a mean or hurtful way. You just want to offer them some ideas or support that they can implement to make what they already have even better. It's up to the original poster to determine if they want to incorporate that feedback. So if you get feedback that you're not necessarily interested in and you don't include it, explain to your instructor why you didn't include that feedback. A big thing you want to keep in mind when you're doing this assignment is you cannot submit it until you have taken the time to complete the reflection. So don't just put the personal inventory. I can't stress that enough. You'll see in the rubric that the reflection is a large part of it because it allows you to not only reflect on the inventory, but the content from the unit and how you implemented that. So it says your personal inventory should be 1 to 2 pages in length. Now, if we kept to that one paragraph for each of the 2 options we chose for the discussion board, then we already have 5 base sentences for each one. So that's 2 paragraphs. Then once you incorporate the feedback, you'll be able to hit that full page. So that's why you should start with at least a paragraph for each of the 2 you chose, because then you can build off of it. And then your reflection needs to be a paragraph of at least 5 to 7 sentences. And as always, please use the APA style template. Now, this item is graded with a rubric. And of course, you can look and see how the points are given to you throughout the assignment. So first and foremost, the revised personal inventory, the integration of feedback, the reflection, our good friends grammar, style, tone, and APA, and the length. So if you have any questions of what is going to be on your feedback from your instructor or what they're going to use to grade your work, all of the answers are right here, and it's broken down into different points. You'll notice that certain things weigh more than others because they're more important to the assignment themselves. We always put grammar, style, tone, and APA in assignments, but we don't always necessarily have a reflection. So when we do ask you to reflect, it's important that it weighs more than the grammar, style, tone, and APA, because that's something you might say out of the ordinary. So we don't get to see a reflection from you as often. So that's why there's more points attributed to it. And I cannot stress enough again the importance of ensuring that you're uploading it on the AP style template. So you will have a title page. You won't have anything on your references page because you're not bringing in any outside sources for this. You're only reflecting on yourself. So there's really nothing that you need to pull from the internet. It's all stuff that you are writing about yourself in your own words, getting feedback from your peers, and then applying that feedback in your own words. So there's no need to look outside of what the instructions are asking you to do. As always, please make sure you're looking at the readings and resources and the Mind Taps readings and activities. You'll see that in this section, there is a chapter on revising your draft. So the things that you're going to want to look for and put into your own revision are going to be answered in this chapter. So there's a purpose behind these readings and activities. They're going to reinforce what we're asking you to do in the assignment. As always, I encourage you to reach out to your instructor with any questions. I also encourage you to reach out to the Center for Academic Success with any questions. More than ever, please make sure you keep to the posting schedule, because it's going to be paramount that you have that feedback to complete the assignment. And in the week 5 activity, which you should do before you even do the discussion and the assignment, you're going to learn why feedback plays such an important role. So when you start them in order, by the time you get to the assignment, you'll have all the information you need. So we may have discussed things a little out of order, but as the progress bar shows, you start at the objectives and activities, work your way through. So when you're actually doing the work, you are thinking about what you've learned previously. All right, thank you for joining today, and I look forward to popping into your classes and seeing what personal inventories you've compiled.